And confirming with Mimi and Marisa that the spotlighting is correct for having Tina on the spotlight.
Right.
Great. All right, I'll
And I
start
can
with.
put my gallery back on. Okay. Hi, folks. Good evening and welcome. We'll wait just a few more minutes to see if anyone else arrives. Okay, so I think we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. And tonight we'll be talking about the world and 4 of the tools from Buddhism that can be really helpful for us to be able to stay present with the world that we're seeing, which has so much chaos and strain really in it. And so that will be our topic for tonight, as you know. And I wanted to introduce some of the Luminous Mind Sangha team. So first, Jeannie is our Zoom host for these events. Thank you so much, Jeannie, for your volunteer service doing this. And this allows whoever's giving the talk to be able to just focus on that part of it. And Jeannie's a great support. So thank you for that, Jeannie. And then we have members of the teaching team. We have Mimi Maduro and Henry Garcia, who's on retreat at home. So this is his Dharma talk for the night. So nice to have you here, Henry. I know your retreat's going well. And then Marisa is an affiliated professional. We did the talk with her a few months ago with, as a licensed trauma therapist and how that relates to practice. So good to have you here. And I'll just say Laura Garcia is our registrar for some of our events. And Robin, good to have you here. And James, nice to see you again. Yeah. So we'll start with well, I do have a couple of announcements. One is that I have had a number of people over the years when they finish the mentoring program, probably at least half the people don't don't want it to end after the year. And so I had a person who his is coming to the end pretty soon, and he suggested that maybe I start offering groups for people who would like to continue after their year is over. And so I surveyed a few people, and I had enough people who are interested to do the first group, which Jeannie is actually in. And so that is something I'm going to start offering for people who have completed the year-long mentoring program. So just want to put that out there. And also, this is on the recording, so anybody who happens to see it who's in a prior mentoring program might be interested in that. And then the second thing is that's new is that we're going to be launching a the Luminous Mind Sangha year-long self-study program, which is basically like the mentoring program, but it won't have the sessions with me. So for people who either maybe would like to do something less expensive, or maybe that isn't a part of it that they feel they need, they can do it as a self-study. It has all the same materials. And then Henry will actually be the administrator for that, and he'll be just really receiving. If people want to do the homework, then they can do it each month by the deadline. And if they complete all of that at the end of the year, they'll get a certificate of completion for that. And then they'll be eligible to attend a group with me. So I'm not sure exactly when that'll be launched, but hopefully it'll be pretty soon. The third thing I'll just say briefly is that about 6 weeks ago, 2 months ago, I was interviewed by Time Magazine for an article on meditation, which is coming out in like a week, less than a week. So we sort of wanted to be prepared in case there was a big influx of interest for something that was more on demand and self-study that people could, have if they wanted to know more about what we're doing. So, okay, so let's go into the sitting now, and find a posture that's comfortable for you, being upright and relaxed. And I'm going to suggest that tonight, given the topic, that we start out feeling in our heart our love for the world, our connection, our sense of however it is that we are feeling about the world as it is right now. There may be a lot of different emotions involved there, but just being in touch with that. Maybe feeling a sense of caring, or maybe there's some distress there, just whatever is really true for you right now. It's kind of like the all beings, but a little bit more general. Or maybe there's even a sense of optimism. Sometimes things happen that give us a sense of that as well. And I'd like you to spend the rest of the time up until the end to do the metta practice for yourself. So in the metta practice, what metta is loving kindness. We direct this towards ourselves, a sense of well-wishing for ourselves, of kindness towards ourselves. And it doesn't have to be at the level of unconditional love. It's just more of a sense of caring, goodwill towards ourselves. And you can feel yourself sitting as you are right at this moment. Or you could also picture yourself in front of yourself as you are. And sometimes it's hard for people to do loving kindness for themselves. So if that's the case, you can do loving kindness for yourself and picture yourself as either a child or even as an infant. And sometimes it's easier to feel the goodness of a child or infant. And so the actual object in the meditation is your own goodness, your own inherent goodness, without doing anything, that there is a goodness that is inherent in you. And sometimes this is referred to as Buddha nature. And so when we're in touch with the inherent goodness of a being, there's a natural sense that can arise of wishing that being well, like if we were to see an animal or our pets. Sometimes it's easier to feel that naturally arising for an animal than it is sometimes for ourselves or other humans. So this is the kind of well-wishing. Just, I hope that being is having a good day. So this is how we want to approach ourselves. And then there are the phrases that can support being in touch with the goodness. The phrases aren't the object, they're support, just like the counting and the samatha. So if you have phrases that you use, you can use those. The phrases I use are, may I be safe. May I be healthy. May I be happy. May I live with ease. May I be liberated. And these would be the same phrases used for other beings. So just feeling that wishing for yourself of these things, if it's helpful. And that can go down to a one-word phrase. Safe. Healthy. Happy. At ease. Liberated. And as we sit with ourselves in this way, we can have that possibility of the actual feeling of loving kindness arising, usually in the heart area, but it could be anywhere in the body. I have this sense of warm friendliness, of caring. And if it doesn't arise naturally, that's fine. That's why this is a practice. And we may also be encountering things that get in the way of that, and that's where the transformational part of the practice comes in, of really noticing those. Ultimately, we come back to the object of our own goodness, but there can be some understanding that can unfold as we digest those over time. So I'll be silent now until a bit later in the meditation. And now going on to the category of all beings as the object of the metta. And so when we do all beings, sometimes it can get very general. So I'd encourage you to just let your attention go to different beings, specific beings in the different categories. So as a reminder, the categories are benefactor. This is somebody who's helped you, that the relationship is easy and you feel a lot of metta for the person naturally. And then the next category is the friend or the loved one, somebody that you care about. Sometimes these relationships are a little complicated, but it's fine for you to pick anybody in that category of friend or loved one. And this could be a pet also. So in the rest of the categories, could be any kind of being. The next category is neutral person or being. So these would be people that maybe you encounter as service providers or out at the store, your mail carrier. They could be, again, non-human beings that you don't know in any way, that you've heard about on the news maybe. And then the next category is difficult person being. So this could be maybe your least favorite politician in your own country or another country. Could be somebody that you don't know, but they're maybe doing harm. Somebody that maybe is in the military that's doing harm, or that kind of difficult being where you don't know them, but it might be hard to do metta for them. And so then we just kind of cycle through a lot of different individual beings in the all beings category. You don't have to rush, just, let yourself kind of be with whoever comes up as a way of including more and more beings in our loving kindness. And then lastly, extending your loving kindness to the people here tonight and the other members of the Luminous Mind Sangha that may be listening to this later, just feeling our hearts, including all of those people as well. Okay, so we will take a 5-minute stretch and bio break and then start with the Dharma talk. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. So the talk tonight is on 4 tools to help us and support us in actually being able to stay present for the world with all the crises and difficulties and calamities that are happening that can be really disturbing and even heartbreaking to be in touch with as we, see the news and just when it seems like maybe things are, calming down a little, it's like some new thing comes up that's heartbreaking and hard to be with. And I hear this a lot when I'm doing sessions with people in the mentoring program and talks and retreats, that it's gotten harder for people. It's a lot of different things at the same time. And so what I'm noticing, it's like people's trauma is closer to the surface because it takes a lot of resources to kind of withstand the knowing of these things. I mean, our ancestors didn't know all this. They only knew what was going on in their own local area. And even when we had things like, printing presses and stuff, it took forever for news to get beyond our own geographic area. So it's a lot for our nervous systems and attention spans to really take in that now we, if somebody was shot in a country on a different continent, we know about it. That's a lot of information. It's I've read that it's thousands of times more than what even our grandparents got. So, these things can be heartbreaking. At this point, there are wars in different countries and huge, huge amounts of suffering there. There's the whole climate disaster that's happening, that feels kind of hard to do anything about. I mean, we can do things on our own, but what is it going to mean if this continues? There's different political upheavals globally in the US, uncertainty around these things, the threat of AI and job loss or other things that might be problematic from that. I could go on, global health loss, the obesity epidemic, mental health epidemic. So there's a lot of things happening, and there's more. I'm just giving a few examples that really can feel like a lot, to be with. And I want to just say as a note that when historians and scholars look at the trajectory of the world throughout our known history that we have that's been written or preserved in some way, this time that we're in has actually had the highest level of human rights, of lack of murder through war or other things, other causes, the least amount of starvation, the best education of any time in history. So, I will say that historians and scholars who actually studies these things over thousands of years, there's sites that have this on it. And we may be taking a little dip right now. But if we look to 100 or 500 or 1,000 years ago, I mean, even just 100 years ago, there were laws in countries like England where if somebody stole something, the punishment might be that they would have their earlobe nailed to a post. And the only way to get out would be to rip that off. So we're talking 100 years ago. So, for people who think that the world hasn't improved, we don't know the details of how it was even just short times ago, where slavery was legal in all kinds of parts of the world not that long ago. So it's important to remember that objectively, everything's better except the climate situation. That has never happened and being human caused ever. There have been climate changes, but they haven't been human caused. So that is the one thing that has not improved and may not improve unless something's done. But overall, it's The expansion of consciousness is the only thing that we know of that hasn't been subject to the law of entropy, the scientific law of entropy, where things decay. Consciousness and the evolution of consciousness is the only thing that has not, actually, that law doesn't apply to, which is kind of a mystery. So I'll get back to this at the end of the talk, but, and these other realities are real. So I'm not making light of any of those, but just to give a bigger perspective. So how do we, as practitioners, as spiritual practitioners, how do we stay conscious and not have to shut down, or maybe not look at the news, or we look at the news and now we're like doom scrolling, and we're finding our own well-being is going into the tank because we are knowing these things. What do we do about it so that we can do our best to actually stay present and not have to shut down? And not be overwhelmed by it, or what do we do when those things happen? So I've got 4 tools from Buddhism that I am suggesting that we can make use of in the face of this, because I think probably it's not going to get better real soon. So it'd be good, I think, for all of us to get better at knowing and working with how to be with it. And also, we're so fortunate because we have tools that most people don't have. Having a spiritual practice. I don't know how people without a spiritual practice are dealing with it. And a lot of people are just going into the defilements, which delusion and going unconscious, just numbing out, is probably the top one I hear, at least from people. Like, I just can't take it, so I'm just going to do binge Netflix watching, or go, onto the shopping channel or whatever. It's a common one to just numb out. There's anger is probably, an aversion is the second one, either going into fear about it and being paralyzed a bit, or going into anger, self-righteous anger about all the people who are causing harm. And I'll get to that a little bit later, but it's a way of not feeling that actually there's a certain helplessness that we have to do anything personally. Like, none of us right now sitting here personally can stop climate change. We can do our part. We can, in our own lives, recycle and try to be energy conscious and eat in ways that don't harm the planet. And so those are all really good things and important things to do, but we can't actually stop it. So this is where anger is a good alternative to having to actually be in touch with that. And then the other one is desire. So sometimes people will go into just like, what do I need to get for myself so I'll be okay? And let me just make sure I'm okay. And, that's what I'm going to focus on. So, all 3 defilements are common ways that people will deal with it, that are taking us out of the present moment. I mean, yes, we have to do some of those things, but what can we do that actually helps us stay in the present moment and is good for our well-being? So these are the 4 things I'm going to talk about. So the first one is to take care of ourselves. I'm going back to the old, put your oxygen mask on first. And sometimes we feel like we're not allowed to do that because other people are suffering so much that if we're okay, somehow there's something wrong with that. But it doesn't help those suffering if we are in reactivity and distress. That doesn't help anyone who's suffering. All we're doing, if we're in that, it just further unbalances the collective consciousness. So we really do need to be able to keep on put on our oxygen mask so that, if the plane is having bumps or going down or whatever is going to happen, we can actually help someone instead of being incapable of helping them. So this is a good place to do loving kindness for ourselves. See, do we feel guilty because we're okay? You're not helping anyone by joining them and not being okay. But if we have our own center, if you really believe, and I know everyone here has seen my hand thing, but if this is how it looks from the view of separation, and this is how it looks from the view of non-separation, our consciousness as an individual goes into the collective. It's part of the collective consciousness. And if our consciousness is not in reactivity and defilements, that in itself is helping the collective. It's a one drop of the ocean, but it's a drop in it. There are thousands of us out there that are points of light that are keeping some balance, and the world needs us to keep the balance, because the people who don't have the tools, they can't. And we can, or at least we can try. So it doesn't help them if we aren't trying, at least, to have this balance within ourselves. We're contributing to the collective. No one's going to give us a medal if we're balanced, but we can know that we're actually doing something at a more subtle level, at the level of consciousness that isn't bound by the body, to contribute what we can to some balance. There's studies, I'll get into this a little bit later, but there was a study actually scientifically that supports what I'm saying. In the TM organization, Transcendental Meditation, years ago, they did a study to see what would happen, and they had an agreement with certain cities that had data on the crime rate, and there would be a group of TM meditators that would go there and meditate for a certain amount of time. And they actually did this in several cities, and they found that the crime rate went down while they were there doing it. So if you don't believe what I'm saying about the collective consciousness, you might want to check out those studies. So, soothe yourself. Do what's needed to soothe yourself so that you can be a point of light and a point of balance, and for your own well-being, not just for others, but for yourself. It's okay for you to put on your oxygen mask first. So the practices for this would be the heart practices. So doing loving kindness for yourself, doing any of the heart practices, equanimity, compassion for yourself. If you feel overwhelmed when you see things, or you're really feeling discouraged, do some compassion for yourself or some loving kindness. And it's okay to feel joyful. It's okay to have good days. Let those things land and let yourself enjoy life so that you can be rejuvenated, even with the fact that other people are suffering in the world. When you bring a centered, proactive you to the world, you're helping. Just in actions you have, just going to the store, the way you interact with people. You don't even have to be doing anything specific to help the world. Just going out there and being non-reactive is a way that you are affecting the world with whoever's in front of you. With whoever's in front of you that day. If you are non-reactive and you're a point of stability, you are affecting the world just through your own presence. So, and it's okay, I wanted to say that it's okay to titrate. So, limiting our exposure to the calamities, I think, is skillful means in Buddhism. It's skillful means to not be spending hours watching these things. You got to know when to turn it off. So this is part of using samatha, where you have to be able to turn away from it too. Again, you're not helping anybody spending an hour going into the tank, doom scrolling. That's not helping anyone. So it's, there's a balance, and you have to figure out what's right for you, of being in touch with what's going on, but not being overwhelmed by it. So it's fine to titrate, where you might take in a little bit, but then you give yourself a break where you're not taking in more than what feels skillful. And each of us has to figure out, do you look at the news every day? I do it on my computer so that I can control the energy coming at me and the quantity. If you're looking at news programs, you're getting that, like, the world is going into the toilet energy, that basically we are hardwired to look at the negative. This is what kept our ancestors alive when the saber-toothed tiger was coming. If they paid attention to their dancing around the fire instead of the saber-toothed tiger, the whole tribe might get killed. So we are hardwired neurologically. This is known in neuroscience. We are hardwired to pay more attention to the negative than the positive. So you want to monitor that and do what you can so that it's balanced and you don't get overwhelmed with that. And to titrate, to take some in, but then to give yourself space where you don't have to be taking it in more than what feels skillful. Okay. So I'm going to go on to the second tool, which is to really dedicate your practice to the collective. And there is a practice in Buddhism called bodhicitta that is really about our aspiration for the awakening for the benefit of all beings. So that we are not, when we are practicing, we really get the reality that we aren't just practicing for ourselves, but we are practicing. When we're meditating, we're doing it on behalf of all beings. So, sometimes it can be a grunt just to get to the end of when the bell rings. And, that's fine if that's happening for you. You don't need to beat yourself up or go into a superego attack. But when we sit down to practice, if we take just a few minutes at the beginning to remember that I'm practicing right now, not just for myself, but for this collective, that it matters. It matters what I'm doing. And I'm dedicating to just do my best, to do what I can, to show up 100%, and to also surrender the outcome, because it's not like we're saying, okay, I'm going to meditate and now the world's got to be better. That's not quite how it works. We can't control these outcomes, but we can show up and do our best. So we're being the change. Gandhi talked about being the change you wish to see in the world. And so in this way, we're being the change by working our own material. If we're thinning out our own me and we're thinning out our own defilements, I mean, for that, every soldier we see out there who's killing somebody, that anger or whatever it is that's making them do that, we aren't doing that. But where do we have these same tendencies in a lesser way that we can be working on? Not to beat ourselves up, but to say, you know what, I'm gonna thin out these defilements in myself. And this is a contribution to the collective. And in Judaism, I mentioned before about points of light, and I've confirmed this, that in Judaism, in mystical Judaism and the Kabbalah, there is a belief that at any one time, there's a certain number of people on the planet that are actually keeping the balance of the planet and keeping the planet from descending into chaos. So I thought it was pretty interesting that they actually have this as part of their understanding. So this is where, when you're dedicating your practice to the collective, you're acknowledging that truth, that just in doing the practice, there's a contribution and that it matters. Even though no one's going to give you a medal for meditating that day, for balancing out the collective consciousness, you can know it for yourself. You can know that it matters, and it matters now more than ever. And there will be certain times, like during the election, I'm teaching a retreat and I thought nobody would want to come. It's full with a wait list because people want to actually be part of the balance. And so now I've made it part of the retreat, actually, an official part of the November retreat. So, this is, we're doing what we can. We can't know what effect it's having. But by us practicing non-greed and generosity, non-hatred and loving kindness and non-delusion and presence to the truth, we are actively contributing to their collective. And the other thing is that we can actually impact what is in our realm. We can do things in our life to make a difference around these issues. We can donate money and do other things. So this is all part of being the change. But the thing we can impact the most is our own consciousness. That is something that we have the most control over. At least we can try. We can show up and try. So there's something empowering about really being in touch with that as well. It can start to offset this disempowerment that we feel when we look at the news and go, how can I help any of this? We can start actually feeling that we're doing what it is realistic to be able to do. And there's a way that there can be a certain equanimity in that. So the third thing that I want to talk about then is that if one chooses to do activism in some way, even internally or in conversations with other people, even if you're not like going out and being an activist, although there are a lot of activists, to do it from love and not from anger or hatred. So there's a big difference when we feel into, I talked about this earlier, that part of what is so demoralizing about really being in touch with the news and everything that's happening is the fact that we can't do anything. And this is where the self-righteous anger, the hatred, the political situation in a lot of countries, including the US, we can't change how someone else votes. We can't change how our maybe relatives that we have vote. And we're powerless. The truth is, we are powerless to change how anyone else votes. And so instead of actually acknowledging this as the first noble truth, we go into a certain kind of hatred or separation or anger. And what's happening there is we don't want to actually be in touch with the first noble truth, which is that suffering and things not being the way we want are part of the human condition for everybody, including the Buddha, including every single one of us. There are going to be things we don't like. There may be a president we don't wish was the president. There may be a leader that starts a war that we don't agree with. We can't stop that. So instead of feeling that, the first noble truth is I can't stop that, and I hate that I can't stop it. It pisses me off that I can't stop it. Instead of actually just being in touch with the truth, we go into the defilements. And so this is where I would really encourage all of us that if we feel strongly about issues, and I'm not saying don't go out and try and make the world better. I think it's wonderful to go out and try and make the world better. And, I spent 15 years professionally doing diversity work and working the rest of my 40-year career with humanistic organizations that were trying to make the world better. So it's good to do what you feel inspired to do to improve the world. I'm not saying don't do it, but there's also an acceptance of the first noble truth. So that if we're out there doing something from a place of non-reactivity, we're going to be way more powerful than if we're doing it from reactivity. There was no way I could have done diversity work if I was reactive. I would have never been able to help people gain wisdom from a place of reactivity. So this is where we can be an influence again with whoever's in front of us, or if we are doing active work, to show up with the wisdom and the commitment to do what we can to make the world better. That's a much more powerful combination. And this is what Martin Luther King was trying to show with nonviolence. And look at how long his legacy has lasted. So, you know, he showed up and he didn't go into the hatred and reactivity that escalates things, where it just makes it worse. It's just adding fuel to the fire. So, you know, equanimity is a way to balance the sense of activism. So, you know, really coming from, and this is where doing the Brahma Viharas, doing compassion for ourselves, maybe even for those who we feel are operating from ignorance or delusion or their own hatred, to see if we can be in touch with really the equanimity practice is a big part, because otherwise you get burned out. There's no way to be in touch with these difficult things unless we have a sense of wisdom, because there's a burnout. The people that I know that I've worked with and that I do say in the diversity work, burnout was a real problem. And you can't help anyone if you're burned out or cynical. So this is really where coming from a place of love is a lot more important. And I was going to play a song that really captures this sense of doing it for love of the world. You know, doing what we're doing really out of love and being in touch with how much we love the world. This is why we want to help. And sometimes it's hard to be in touch with that love because it feels like our heart's going to get broken. And it might get broken sometimes, actually. I mean, Trungpa talked about this, that he felt like he was one big wound. That's probably why he drank, you know? So, I mean, unfortunately, he didn't have ways of working the personality material that were more modern. But this is really where the equanimity practice comes in, of really understanding we can be in touch with the love and we can be in touch with the wisdom that says, I can't actually make it different. But what I can do, I can work with that person right in front of me. That I can do something about. So I won't play the song, but if we have time later, maybe I'll play it. And then the fourth tool is so let's see. So imagine a circle, a large circle, and in the middle is a smaller circle. And the outside circle is called the circle of concern. So these are all the things we can be concerned about, like the list of things I just talked about. That's everything that could be concerning to us. And in the middle of that is what's called the circle of influence. And those are the much, much smaller subset of things we can actually do something about. When we focus on the circle of concern, we feel super disempowered. And that disempowerment makes us even less capable of doing anything. When we focus on the circle of influence that we can do something about, like working with the people right in front of you, or picking a few things that you're going to, you know, try and influence through actions, then we feel empowered, like we're doing something, and our circle of influence can actually get bigger. So the fourth tool is actually staying optimistic, doing what we need to feel the sense that I may not be able to stop the war in whatever country as I'm sitting here today, but I could do this thing in my own environment, or I could live in a certain way that is minimizing my harm to others, to myself, to the planet. So this is really, we're not giving up. And I really believe that a change in consciousness is the only thing that ultimately is going to change the world. because people's actions only change with a change in consciousness. So there are shorter term things that we can and do need to do to make the world better, but a change in consciousness really is what is needed for the planet to survive. And so all of you, all of us who are practicing, it's kind of a heavy responsibility to carry, but you're a model for others and working on your own patterns. If people see that you're different, sometimes they wonder how that happened. Or if you're, say, have equanimity in the face of things, even though you care, but you can still have equanimity. It's inspiring to other people. And, if everyone was just practicing, not even awakened, if everyone on the planet even just had a spiritual practice, this planet would be a paradise. There's no shortage of food or shelter or energy if people weren't hoarding or taking advantage of others. If people were just practicing and trying to thin out their patterns, this planet would be a paradise. And this is really what I believe the human experiment is all about, is can we spiritualize the material realm? Or are we going to self-destruct before that's possible? But if this realm is amazing, even though there will always be the First Noble Truth and pain will always be part of it, because these body things, they don't last very long and they're really fragile and they get sick and hurt, and these psyches that we have get attached to people and people die and things don't go the way we want. And this is right back to the First Noble Truth. But if we can accept that the First Noble Truth is a part of the human experience and not add that second arrow of the suffering, this is really what Buddhism is working with, is that second arrow that's optional of the suffering. This planet could be a paradise. So, there's no way to know if that will be possible, but we're kind of like the pioneers out there in the jungle with machetes trying to clear a pathway for the people after us. And the people before us, there are even less of them. They cleared the way for us. So there are more of us now than there were 1,000 years ago. So we're doing our best to clear out this pathway of potential for human consciousness and for humans and bodies to live in this amazing physical realm with all of its beauty and all of its drama and for those of us who have an enlightenment drive, it is possible to overcome the instinctual drive. So this would be another thing, is to work with those instinctual drives and to see if we can be part of the balance between the enlightenment drive and the instinctual drives that are needed to keep bodies alive. We need those instinctual drives, just like every other mammal on the planet. But in humans, they run amok. So we can be part of balancing this and, being the change that we want to see. And it may not happen in our lifetime. We don't know, but this larger trajectory of the course of humanity are the 20 or 50 years of our lifetime. It may not even get better before we die. There may even be millions of humans who have to die in order for people to get it. We don't know. It may not happen, but we can stay the course. Even if we can't see the change in our lifetime, can we trust that there is an optimizing force that is at work? And to find Sangha is super, super important here. Because it's like all of us who have this calling are holding hands at the level of consciousness underneath the radar, supporting each other and staying the course. And other people don't get it. They're lost in fear or in self-protection or anger or unconsciousness. And that may get worse, but to be able to find inspiration and find others who are doing this work under the radar is really helps to stay the course if you have even just a few other people that feel the same way you do, that we're doing this for ourselves so that our well-being is also included, but we're also trying to hold this balance for humanity and chop a path through the jungle of consciousness that maybe there'll be more behind us when we're gone, just like the ones in front of us did it for us. So this is really where feeling your own strength and your commitment to doing this, to working on yourself, to if you get lost in the defilements around what's going on with the world, just remember the First Noble Truth that you can't change it, but you can do something about that circle of influence. The things that are right in front of you, you can do something about, and that's enough. That is all you can do, is work on yourself and work on the things right in your face around you. And you can make a huge difference there. And we don't know how that'll affect the larger consciousness. So I'm just going to read a Zen story that some of you have heard that's just helping remind us that we can't know from our limited perspective of an individual human what the grander scheme of the unfoldment of consciousness is. So an old Zen story goes like this. A Chinese farmer had a mare that broke through the fence and ran away. When his neighbors learned of it, they came to the farmer and said, "Oh my gosh, you've had such bad luck. You don't even have a horse during planting season now. We're like so sorry for you." And the farmer listened and replied, "Bad luck, good luck, who knows?" And so then a couple of weeks later, the mare returned and some stallions had followed her. So the farmer, all of a sudden, he had several horses. He not only had the mare, but he had these stallions who now could actually help him plant even more crops. So when the neighbors learned of it, they came to the farmer and said, "Oh, wow, you're a rich man now. What good fortune you have." And the farmer again said, "Good luck, bad luck, who knows?" So then a couple of weeks later, the farmer's son was working with the horses, trying to, tame them. And one of the stallions threw the son, and the son broke his leg. And so the farmers, when they heard about it, they came over and said, "Oh my gosh, now your son can't help you with the planting. And, your bad luck is back." And the farmer again said, "Bad luck, good luck, who knows?" So then a few weeks later, the emperor's army rode into the town, and they conscripted the oldest son of every single family, except the farmer, because his son's leg was broken. And so he remained behind, and the neighbors arrived and they said, "Oh, you're so fortunate. Your son's here and our sons are all gone." And the farmer again said, "Good luck, bad luck, who knows?" So, if we can sort of trust in this underlying optimizing force that has created a situation that is mysterious, in which human consciousness is the only thing in the universe that isn't subject to the law of entropy, that has actually evolved in the physical realm. There's a mystery going on there that we can't know the course of, but that I believe we can trust. And you've probably seen it in your own unfoldment. So it's not just something out there, it's something you've seen in your own unfoldment as you've practiced more and gotten closer to the mystery, that there's a knowing that something larger is animating everything. So I'll just stop there now and see if there are any comments or questions about what I've been saying. Robin?
I haven't had any readings or training. I'm curious about bodhicitta. Is there a listed resource on that?
Yeah, let's see, do I give a talk on that in the heart practices? There might be a talk on that on Dharma Seed that I've given. And
Right.
on Inner Craft, I do have a whole talk on bodhicitta. So those would be some resources from within our,
Okay.
our realms. But you could even look it up on Wikipedia. There's, it's a whole teaching. I attended a 10-day retreat on bodhicitta. So just to give you a sense of like how much it can cover, but it's really, it's pointing not only at our sense of doing practice for the benefit of all beings, it's in that we're also connecting to the truth of the non-separation and to the enlightenment drive. So
Okay.
it's cultivating our flame for awakening and also our sense that of this larger consciousness that's animating everything, that when we're practicing and we're thinning out our own patterns, we're contributing to that. So of course they talk about it different. This is from Tibetan Buddhism.
Mhm.
And you're going to be starting the mentoring program. So there's talk there in the heart practices. I talk about it there as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well, maybe since we have a minute, I will play the song. So this is a song that to me really, I'm going to play a shorter version of the whole song. It's about 4.5 minutes. It's by a woman named Jennifer Bearzon and some of the people that she plays music with. And it's called Praises for the World. And it's really, it's a beautiful, she just captures this sense of love for the world that really is the motivation for our caring for the world. It's hard to be in touch with that when we see all the suffering. But when we are in touch with it, it's like our heart can break open and be so strong that it doesn't need to be protected to close. And that's really the ultimate potential, is that the heart can be open, and instead of needing to protect, there's an ability to be so vulnerable that we actually are invulnerable. The ultimate invulnerability or strength is to not need anything to be a certain way. I mean, it's kind of, for me, one of the definitions of enlightenment is that you don't need circumstances to be any certain way in order to be able to be present and to be open-hearted. So anyway, the song for me kind of puts me in touch with the love of the world. If you ever feel like you need some inspiration, and you may have your own things that help you feel inspired. And this is just one of my favorites. So I'm just going to play this from my phone, and then I'll end it at a certain point. And you can just feel your heart as you're listening.
like incense in my hair. Moon high in a cold black sky illuminates my bed. A train outside my windows, keeping vespers in the night, singing praises, praises for the world. But life can make you bitter, this life can turn you cold. Seems I spend most of my own just trying to crack the code. But if I die tomorrow, may the last words that I know be praises, praises for the world. Well, some predict the rapture, where we all will leave this place. The chosen ones will pack their bags for somewhere out in space. But the holiest words I've ever read or thought or sung were praises, praises for the
So we're just about at the end of our time here. One of the things we've been doing is to see if anybody would like to have the breakout option and do a triad where you can talk about, how this is landing with you, anything that you might be taking away from this that you might want to apply in your life. But we need to sort of have at least 3 people who would want to do that. So is there anybody who would like to do it? You can just show hands. Okay, so there's 2. Well, we could just do it with 2. Okay, there's 3. So Jeannie, can you have those folks go into the triad? And then if you don't want to, you can just drop off and we will end here. And in the triad, please just make sure everybody has time. It's just 10 minutes. And then you'll come back to the large group, and those of us who are part of the LMS team will be here and we can debrief a little bit. So go ahead and drop off if you don't want to do it. And for everybody else who may be watching the recording, I hope this helps you to be able to be as present as possible for the world, both for your own benefit and for the world's, because the world really needs those of us who can stay balanced during these times.
Tina, I misunderstood. I need to go. I didn't realize
Okay.
we were going to do that right now. I thought you meant for the
Oh,
next.
okay. Yeah, we've been offering this just as a way to connect with others. So, okay, so given that, who would like to do it? Or do we have enough people, or should we just end here?
Yeah, but
Okay, so we'll just have, are you okay to do it with two of you?
Yep.
Okay, so we'll just have those two, and then the rest of you can drop off. Okay, be well.
all right. Thank you, Tina.
Yeah.
What do I do?
Those of you who are going to go into the inquiry, you can just wait, and then when you see an invitation to go into a breakout room, you would just accept that, and then you'll come back automatically in 10 minutes.
Gotcha.
And those of us in the LMS group, you just don't accept the invitation, as a reminder.